Here's something from the past that many people are probably, people like, especially in New York City, might not even be aware of. Now, with all this stuff going on with COVID, you think, wow, you think you're scared, you're living in scary town? Well, there is one here, written by Anna Quinlan, November 13th, 1982. Ah, this is going back to the old days when they used the microfilm, you know? Many people are not aware of that. When you go to the library, when like an old article, they had them in what they call microfilm. Now that technology is like it's ancient now, or obsolete. I don't think anybody uses these anymore. Okay, so it says about New York. By the end of the week, the Khapra Beetle, yep, that's it. You might have heard of the Khapra Beetle? Well, if not, now you're going to hear about it. The Khapra Beetle had caused the cordoning off of a substantial area of lower Manhattan. The presence there of police officers, consolidated Edison personnel, sewer workers, traffic enforcement agents, the reported death of one cat greatly exaggerated and some pigeons unconfirmed, and the reported collapse of a second cat momentary. It had become the most political insect since the Mediterranean fruit fly. Meanwhile, it was dying quietly at the center of all the drama in the middle of the siege of Vestry Street. It was just what everyone involved had said it would be when the announcement was made that a Tribeca warehouse would be fumigated with a toxic gas to kill the tiny grain-eating insects hiding inside. The city had said it would take precautions, and the streets were full of precautions. By the way, during that time, I didn't work for these people, but eventually I did. And we had to do like fumigations on time. They were selling goods, even like stuff coming from India. Like, let's see. If you ever look at the some of the manhole covers, the old ones, they would say made in Bombay. Of course, they changed the name now to Mumbai, but Bombay. Some of the old manhole covers in the streets of New York City would say made in Bombay, which is Mumbai. And some of them were infected with the Khapra beetle, and we had to fumigate those. Yeah. So when I came on the job, it was after this event happened in Manhattan, but I was aware of when this was happening. Okay, the most vocal and active Tribeca residents, clutching their pets and their children, had said they were leaving, and they had their asparagus ferns waving darkly behind deserted windows. Their less vocal neighbors had said nothing, and they were saying nothing still, only giving their names and numbers to police officers who came around to collect the information in case a full-scale evacuation was needed. George Vanish, I know him. When I came on the job, he used to work out in Manhattan, the assistant regional director of the Federal Department of Agriculture, said he was sorry that there had been communication problems. And so yesterday he sat in his office downtown from the warehouse building. taking calls, answering questions, growing hoarse. The department hoped that the fumigators could begin to vent the building as soon as possible, mixing the methyl bromide, just like I said, with air and letting it escape through a stack atop the warehouse, and that the whole procedure might end with the weekend. So what they used to do, well, this was a big operation because this was the warehouse, but like when you fumigating like stacks of stuff, whether it's food stuff, flowers, sunflowers coming in from Thailand, or like I said, the manhole covers, you have to cover with top, and then you put like those heavy things. It looks like snakes. You put them in the bottom at the base, way down, and then you have to check to make sure. You have to walk around the perimeter, and you have to check to make sure that the methyl bromide is not escaping. See? So if there is a change, you're gonna see like the difference in the light or what have you. You'll be detected. And when you're doing that, you have to be wearing like you have to be suited up. You have to wear a face mask, and you have to have a tank with air, not so much oxygen, but air, so you can breathe. So when you're around that area, if there's any methyl bromide escaping and it's detected, you will know to stop and fix it when you pump the gas in. And there's like a calculation for that, depending, on the size. They go by the area, how much methyl bromide gas you're going to be pumping in. And then the best thing you do, you leave the area. You don't want to sit around there. And it has like a certain time it's supposed to be done. So whenever anyone brought up the warehouse that still needed to be fumigated in Brooklyn, there's one in Brooklyn, he smiled a weak, crooked smile. In 28 years in the pest control business, he had never had a furor like this one. Carol D. Saram, a member of the community board who lives in a loft building near the infested warehouse, had said the fumigation had been bungled by the government authorities from the beginning. I'm glad I wasn't working there that time. And she was enraged and triumphant when she heard that pigeons were rumored to have died and that some of the gas had seeped into the sewer system. Miss D. Saram was mentioning dioxin, Loft Canal, and nuclear waste when suddenly a man slipped through the blue police barriers set up all around the warehouse and cried, "Carol, our cat has collapsed." Miss Saram ran toward her building. She was followed by several newspaper reporters, 2 television camera crews, 4 radio reporters, and a number of photographers. On the steps of her building, she started to cry about the cat, about the pigeons, about what the methyl bromide might do to her neighborhood. Her neighbor ran to his apartment, where he was met by a woman holding the cat. So the cat was alive. "He's better," the woman said happily. In the street outside, Adrian Jenigan, who works for an offset printing company, around the corner, watched the clutch of reporters run, and said to a friend, "You think I can get on television if I get some pains, man?" It was just what everyone had said it would be. It was a panic, pandemonium, press coverage, and paranoia. Compare that to what's going on with COVID now, right? The cobblestone streets look the way New York looks when there is a bomb scare, a hostage siege, or the production of a motion picture with a cast of thousands. This had elements of all three. A group of men from the federal government who had sprayed the stuff on Khapra Beetle time and time again in perfectly placid locales had met up with a city where, in some neighborhoods, not a Sparrow falls without the formation of a Save the Sparrow committee. Well, you know what? We used to be doing fumigation down on the pier, right where the Brooklyn Bridge Pier is, Pier 1, right over there. I remember. I used to go right there. And we do fumigations. You know? And you didn't have, or I guess people probably didn't know because it was on the pier. So all this was like, this fuss was down in Tribeca where a lot of people live, which is different than Pier 1. They had made the ghastly error of saying early on that Tribeca was not a residential area, overlooking the potted geraniums on the fire escape and the curtains at the windows and the flurry of loading docks and tractor trailer trucks. The residents of Tribeca did not like being told that they did not exist. Many of them have marched against nuclear power and read about Agent Orange, are politically and socially conscious, and even less did they like plans to use methyl bromide in their neighborhood. Lobbies and elevators were papered with leaflets. Meetings were held. Demands made and met for high vent stack, for monitors for emergency precautions. But before the spraying had even begun on Thursday evening, Herb Brown, who lives on Vestry Street, felt himself becoming contaminated. "I started to experience a little paranoia," he said. "I was frightened. I believe I was smelling something. I thought I was going to wake up and be a body." The workers at the Apollo Container and Paper Company, padlocked because of some methyl bromide seepage into the basement, went inside to rescue Jeanette the cat, who was alive and well. "But remember, she has 9 lives," said Gaston Sadowski, the president of the company. In the midst of it all sat the afflicted warehouse, swathed in blue and green striped tarpaulin, like an unimaginative Thanksgiving Day parade float. The bugs reportedly dined inside, perhaps in mid-munch, certainly unmourned. Some New Yorkers who have been forced over the years to accept the basic fact that roaches will find nice apartments even if people do not, wondered why it was even necessary to kill the beetles. Mr. Vanish explained, "The cargo might go to the Midwest, then it goes into a warehouse in Kansas City. Then the Khapra beetles might wind up on some stuff going to a farmer or a grain producer. You could start a serious infestation." Mr. Vanish was handing out pamphlets about the beetle. On the cover, it looked like a ladybug, but Mr. Vanish has one embedded in plastic on his desk as a paperweight, and really it's just a brown dot, scarcely a monument to the massive disagreements that can occur between government and the informed, enraged governed, to the spectacle taking place on Vestry Street and its surroundings. The pamphlet states that the Khapra beetle has been successfully eradicated in the United States. It is sadly out of date. So the Khapra beetle, I don't know if it originates, but that's where it comes from, usually from India, going back in those times. And any stuff coming from India, like grains, rice, stuff like that, you look out. Check for the Khapra beetle, because the Khapra beetle will do a lot of serious damage. Serious damage. Probably could eat up about 85% of your grain if you're not careful. And that's why they tried to eradicate it from the United States, because if it gets out in the Midwest, where we have like a lot of grain, corn, barley, all that kind of stuff, it will devastate the agricultural market out there. But I thought I would read this in contrast to what's going on with COVID and how people reacting. Because back then you didn't have the internet where people could get online and make comments and so forth. But reading this article is kind of humorous in a way, the way the people behave in Tribeca. And by the way, Tribeca is said to be the neighborhood with like the lowest crime in all of New York City. That's what I read. I was working there during the winter and the spring. I worked over there in one of the quarantine hotels, 12-hour shifts down in Tribeca, in Canal Street. But that particular area has a lot of, like, it used to be like warehouses, businesses and so forth, but people do live there. Yeah, people live there. But at the same time, you don't have much of any kind of crime over there in that area. So, but it's an expensive area to live in. But when I look at it, to me, that's not the kind of, place I would want to live in. Like you're surrounded by warehouses and stuff like that. But I guess to each his own, as they say.